as she comes down here to lead this panel and discussion. Have a seat, Ken. And she is the former Chief Enterprise Innovation Officer from Samsung, and now she's currently the CEO and founder of Atlanta Tech Park. I've been really excited to have you here to introduce this great group, the folks virtual with us, and also here in the room. Over to you.
I'm going to stand up here. I'm very short, so I could sit down, but you might not be able to see me with these other guys here. So I've been in the cyberspace for over 30 years, and I'm a woman. And I'm not scared to say that, but we sneak up on the rest of you, so you just got to be careful, because you would never think I was a cyber person by looking at me. There are 38 million jobs that are going to be available by 2025 in the cyberspace, and we are not prepared. So I want to get us started with a lot of energy and have each one of us introduce ourselves. And I'll wrap it up with a couple of closing remarks on myself, and then we'll get into the panel. So why don't we start with the folks on the video. Rick, you want to go first?
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. My name is Rick Pina. I am a soldier for life. I served in the U.S. Army for 25 years. I retired in 2015 from the Pentagon as the Army CTO. I came out to industry. I've been at Worldwide Technology for 6 years, and I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Super. Thank you, Rick. Next person on our video is Mike. Mike, you want to go next?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I am Mike Yonkers. I am the Director of Systems Engineering at Cisco's Federal team. Got my career started as a civil servant in the intelligence community. Been in industry for a little while. Been in and around the cyber community for quite a while as well.
Super. All right, here in the room, Colonel, you want to go next?
Ken
Go ahead,
Gonzalez.
Ken.
Good afternoon. I'm Ken Gonzalez. I need a mic. There we go.
Yeah, you might want to.
Hi, everyone. Ken Gonzalez. Thanks for having us here today, by the way. I'm a managing director at Night Dragon. Night Dragon is a growth equity and venture capital firm based in San Francisco that is specifically focused on investing in cybersecurity technologies. A little background on myself. I'm a former Army officer, infantry, didn't do anything in cyber when I was in service. But I've been a technology executive for many years in some pretty great companies like Siebel Systems, McAfee, Avast, FireEye, Mandiant, and that's who I am. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. I think he's got his own mic.
Yes.
Go for it.
Good afternoon. Good. I'm Colonel Jim Turnetti. I just took over as the Commandant of the United States Army Signal School here at Fort Gordon, and I'm the 41st Chief of Signal. And probably the most important thing to know about me is that I served with Rick Pena twice. Once at Fort Hood and once when he departed the Pentagon. It kind of really shaped my career. So I was hoping he'd be here in person, but I'm glad to be able to spend a little time with him today.
Well, hopefully it'll make for a very chewy conversation. So we are talking about the relationship between the private and the public sector. And a little bit about my background is I grew up in AT&T through Bell Laboratories. So was always part of innovation and innovating in a special way. A lot of people think, oh, Robin, can you help me with my phone bill? No, I never did any of that. Have about 15 patents to my name, just wrote another one last year, got it approved in identity management, so you don't stop innovating if you're an innovator. And I went to BlackBerry because I was the first person to put an application on the BlackBerry, and the way to put an application on the BlackBerry in those days, you had to hack into the BlackBerry. So I actually had hacked into the BlackBerry and pulled a field services platform onto the BlackBerry. And it's when I got a call from the CEO who said, you hacked into my BlackBerry. And I said, yes. And he said, can you come talk to me? So then I went to work for BlackBerry and I led their software services and security piece of business as their CIO, and then had to run their internal chief information security operation as well as their external product security operation. When I left BlackBerry, I went to work for Samsung as their Chief Enterprise Innovation Officer, and the first thing I had to do, because we were doing B2B work, was actually put security on a Samsung commercial consumer device so that business could use it, and as well as government. When I was with AT&T, I had to help recover 9/11. We did Katrina. And when people think of crises, they don't think of cyber, and cyber is the first thing you should be thinking of. In the space that we're in right now, we're in a war or a battle, and we need all the hands on deck. And we need the private and public sector to work very well together because our attack vectors or threats are working together as we speak. So Colonel, why don't you get us started and talk to us a little bit about how you see the government and the, and that private sector engaging with each other.
So I think there are a lot more opportunities than most folks realize. Last week, we just completed the Association of the United States Army symposium. It's about 33,000 folks attend, 650 vendors, about 80 nations. A great opportunity to exchange ideas. But building on that, there's also in different theaters, they have similar type of venues. For example, when I served in Hawaii, there's a land pack. And they break down and they have breakout sessions and panels similar to this. And I was on a panel where we talked about the communications gap in the Indo-Pacific region. And it was not too well attended. And throughout the rest of the event, I kept getting approached by vendors who wanted to know my gaps for us in theater. And it was very frustrating if you had just attended the panel, I think you would have gotten everything that you were looking for as opposed to trying to carve out one-on-one time. So those type of events and participating in those panels, I think is very, very informative. Some of the other offerings we have here a little bit more local is a Cyber Quest. Here with the Cyber Center of Excellence conducted annually in March. Last time we had 14 vendors, they presented 15 different technologies. And it's just an experimental opportunity for vendors to come and present solutions to some of our challenges that are pretty unique. And then I say another opportunity is just the office calls. And some folks don't think they may want to shy away from an office call, but in my past job at Southcom is the J6. It was very informative when vendors came with new capabilities or new technologies. Looking at that theater, not a lot of satellite coverage down in South America, Central America, Latin America. And meeting with a satellite vendor was able to come up with solutions for on-demand bandwidth requirements that were extremely helpful for us that we actually ended up using long-term. So those are just some of the few venues that I think to collaborate with.
And I think those are wonderful. As we think about that engagement, I don't know, Rick, if you want to add to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll piggyback off of what Colonel Turinetti said. A lot of it has to do with, one, within the government, a willingness to communicate to industry. There seems to be a little bit of apprehension, especially at the senior rank. Sometimes Colonel Turnetti can understand what I'm saying there. So there has to be a welcoming spirit there, from an industry perspective. And then conversely, on the industry side, we have to do something actionable with that information. So when I was in uniform, I actually spent a good portion of my last few years in the military as like the Army's face to industry. And I had to communicate to industry where the Army was headed. And so like Colonel Turnetti was talking about from a gaps and opportunities perspective, you need somebody in uniform to communicate to industry, hey, these are the emerging gaps, and therefore the emerging opportunities. And then the goal would be to shape industry IRAD investment. So every company in industry is doing some type of investment from an R&D perspective. And the goal would be to understand the military's emerging gaps and opportunities, understand emerging technology, obviously map the two and marry the two together. But if investments are being made, then the partnership is that we in industry are willing to shape and maybe even redirect some resources towards gaps and opportunities that the military needs so that we can meet them at that point of need. And so that open dialogue is required because these decisions, we're talking about things that are not going to happen for 12, 18, 24 months. So somebody needs to be forward thinking, and then we have to be ready to respond.
Yeah, Rick, how do you think about it, though? If we're just trying to close the gaps that we know about today, we are not seeing around the corner and being holistic. And I don't know, Ken, if there was something you wanted to add to that. I saw your body flinching as he was talking, so I thought maybe you had something to interject.
Yeah, I sure do. Yeah, Rick mentioned the word dialogue, and that's an interesting, I look at this as a two-sided challenge here, and just going on dialogue. The problem is as an investor in early stage companies and growth stage companies, they don't know the language. There might be a dialogue, but they're speaking something completely different than what the U.S. government is speaking. So on your side, Colonel, your challenge, and you present opportunities and gaps, but we're tracking 4,500 different cybersecurity vendors around the world, right? And they don't have the chance to get that audience. So that's kind of a challenge on your side is how do you vet that and build your pipeline of interesting capabilities? On the investor side, again, coming back to dialogue and language, they don't even know where to start. So one thing, like from the investor side, one thing we've done at Night Dragon is we've built a group called Night Dragon Government Services, which is specifically designed to help train our companies in that language. So we do an assessment across, personnel, cleared personnel, our facilities. We look at certifications that are required across products in order to access the government opportunity. And we help them mature through a process so they actually can learn the language and start that dialogue. But that connection between innovation and government is out of reach for many startups, I would say.
Yeah, and one thing I have said to several people, in fact, it's a talk I give about innovation. Innovation left the corporation about 5 years ago. So a lot of big companies don't innovate. They're just reacting and or patching. And a lot of our innovation is happening outside the corporate walls. So engaging with those new technology companies that are coming up and not speaking to them in the language that they might understand, because they don't think of cybersecurity the way we think of cybersecurity. Mike, what do you think of all the outside the corporation activity?
Yeah, I know where I come from. I come from Cisco, and we are a big company. So I take your comment about innovation at big companies
throwing it your way
personally, but I actually love the comment, because where I wanted to take the conversation was, it's easy to talk about things. I was at a small cybersecurity company, and it was easy for us to produce PowerPoints with ideas of solutions. I think the reality that's really helpful is when we can come together and prove things out. So I love these kind of joint exercises that we can do. I love these industry engagements like through ATARC and NIST, NCCOE, where we can drive stuff and actually prove it out. So we're not talking about it, we're doing it. And that's why I love working with Rick Pina at Worldwide Technologies, because we have a place where we can meet the government in their Advanced Technology Center, and we can show what we're talking about. So we can talk about things, we can explore, we can dialogue, we can come up with new ideas, and then we can start to prove it out in a very agile kind of way, which I think is a really powerful way to move forward.
And that interaction is important. So I want to make an extra point on top of what you just said. It is important not only for businesses to run resilience drills, backup and recovery drills, disaster recovery drills, anything that would allow you to actually see and resolve business in the event business is impacted by a cyber event. I think it would be a phenomenal thing if the government or the private and public sector would run those same type of drills and scenarios in unison, so that if you knew that you were having an attack or an event, what does the telecom company do in that case? What does a company like Cisco bring to the table? And yourself, Ken, what would you guys bring to the table if you're doing a roundtable? Not doing it from, hey, I'm going to make another sale, but how do we come together as a team so that we're more aware of what's going on in the cyber landscape and that threat landscape that we can help each other prevent?
One thing I was going to say is I actually think there's a lot of good efforts starting in that direction right now. Director Easterly at CISA, for example, recently stood up the JCDC, which is the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative, which is actually industry doing just that. This is leaders in the cybersecurity industry, leaders of infrastructure, leaders of government getting together, kind of a whole of nation approach to improving our ability to respond to cyber attacks. So I think on their roadmap, assuming this makes progress, will be exactly what you're talking about, joint cyber exercises to effectively war game out what happens in different scenarios.
Yeah.
So there's some lights on the horizon there.
A lot of people say, oh, it's easy to see a hurricane coming, and you can plan for it. Cyber is happening all the time. It is a constant 24/7, 365, and you'll wear your people out. So you need to have the tools and the technologies and the talent around the table to be able to work that. And it doesn't all come from one sector. It has to be a joint event. So Colonel, do you see us maybe running drills in the future that we can actually play out some of these scenarios so that we as an industry or country can defend ourselves better in the future?
So we do run drills, and it really is more the homeland defense that's in more that lane. We're more focused on the military networks, which is legal reasons make it a little bit more challenging. So there is a little bit of a touch point, but we do run those kind of drills. Now the outreach to how much it goes out to industry, I can't.
Could you open the doors up for industry to actually participate or watch, or not allowed?
I think it's case by case, depending on details of each of those
Yeah,
scenarios.
and the corporation has the same problem. They don't want to share the threats that they see because of liability and legal issues.
Now, I should say, though, we do have, like, hack the Army. So your
Oh, well.
comment of hacking into the
We would get in
BlackBerry
trouble if we
CEO,
hacked the Army?
Well, you talk about that, it was kind of an introduction. That would probably not go over well with the Army if you
Yeah.
just did that on your own. But we do vet hackers and
Okay.
give them the opportunity to kind of show us where we do have room to improve, shall I say.
But is that
But
kind
it's
of
a
one
much
of
more
those,
controlled environment. than
one of
that.
those bug bounty games?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, there's got to be something we can do. And the reason I say this is I see the cyber threat on a regular basis. And they're moving faster than we're moving. The level of fraud that occurs just through the cyber landscape, the number of platforms, they actually have ransom as a service. You can actually go out there as an attacker and buy ransomware as a service and go and ransom somebody here in the United States. And yet we're not able to do things to block and tackle events like that in a real-time way. If there's some way we could unite our efforts between government and the private sector, it would be phenomenal before an event occurs. So in that proactive, preventative, and predictive way. I don't know, Rick, if there's anything in your space that you guys are doing to, I call it, address the 3 Ps of proactive, preventative, and predictive.
Yeah, so where Mike mentioned it earlier, we have an advanced technology center, and we're fairly I guess unique in that we've made a significant investment already into this creative environment where we integrate a bunch of different logos. Basically, any technology company you can think of, we have it in an environment that's like a $600 million investment. And to the point that was made earlier about smaller boutique, very innovative companies not knowing the government language, we work with them to get into an environment where we can translate their technology in a way that's useful. However, since we're talking about challenges here, and I hate to bring this up, but I think I have to bring it up. When I was in the Pentagon, the term agile acquisition was we kind of chided and said it was an oxymoron. But at the end of the day, if we are going to get there, we have to break down some of these acquisition challenges and acquisition hurdles, meaning that, as an example, we at Worldwide Technology have the $600 million lab. We're running live environments for like a JP Morgan, a Bank of America, a Walmart, a Starbucks. We're doing some of this for the Navy, thankfully, because we have some contracts in the Air Force and et cetera. But for the most part, if we don't have an existing contract in place, we have lots of innovation and knowledge transfer that we could provide to the military, but then we're not allowed to, because if we do, then it's considered to be an unfair advantage, and then we get OCI'd out of an opportunity. And so now it's like our hands are tied. So we have to figure that out to where there is truly a partnership and is mutually beneficial. And if we're helping the DoD, we don't get hindered in the process.
Yeah, there's got to be a way. Go ahead, Colonel.
If I could. So it's been a number of years now that the Army established the Army Futures Command to really try to get after exactly what Rick was talking about. And one of the focus areas is on the network. It's the cross-functional team network that is General Jeff Ray that leads that, formerly General P. Gallagher. And they really are reaching out with industry and trying to find the latest and greatest and expedite that acquisition process. We do have some other opportunities, though, with CRADAs, the Cooperative Research and Development Agreements. Usually with the PMs, I think it's C5 ISR has about 30 of them. But right here at the Fort Gordon Cyber Battle Lab, they haven't done one yet, but they do have the opportunity to do that. So maybe on a smaller scale, but there are some opportunities. So I think it is a little bit faster, not where you want it. I appreciate that. But there are some opportunities there.
Well, I know that there's some work that's being done with the ISAC, and the ISAC is helpful between government, the private and public sector. That is one thing that is started, and there is some sharing there, but it's still very conservative because there is fear of, I guess, information being shared outside the room. But how do we get our arms as the United States thinking about this in a holistic way that we are protecting not only our nation and our nation's interests, but our intellectual property? And that intellectual property is being stolen from us on a regular basis. How do we stem that tide? And, Mike, I know Cisco does a lot in this space. My buddy Chuck over there and previously John Chambers, a lot with us from a security perspective and held many forums and opened the door to a lot of private companies to come in and collaborate together. Are y'all still doing those type of things?
Yes, and yes to everything you said. So we actively, through our threat intelligence group, participate in ISACs. We see that as a really good forum, as a way to bring things together and share what we see and or learn so that we can help defend as well. So that's a good path forward. We believe heavily in things like the CMMC activities that are going on to help try to bring some additional level of maturity into the defense industrial base. We are not only a helper along that way, but we also are impacted by that. So we have committed to that in a very strong and powerful way. And we do to try to solve for the innovation problem that you talked about in big companies. We have various financial and both internal and external kind of joint ventures where we can invest, things where we can allow technology to incubate, not just from our own ideas, but some other potential smaller companies that we see, or even bigger companies where we need to build some alliances, say with maybe one of the big cloud service providers, given the way the domains are changing and how things are going forward. So yes to all the questions that you asked and then some. We are still very actively doing that inside of Cisco.
Now, one of the things I always like to see when you're working, it's people don't think about cyber or security. I used to tell somebody that, when you go out to buy a car, the first thing is you're not thinking about the good brakes or the locks on the doors. You're thinking about maybe how fast the car goes or how efficient it is or what color it might be and how shiny. So nobody ever thinks as security or cyber as a real sexy topic, so to speak, and they don't run out to go buy that. So what I like to push is growing up technologists, true technologists that understand that whatever they do, they have to have security in mind first, and that they have to know their security story. So Ken, do you guys push a security story as you push your capability?
Yeah, I think your analogy with cars and security mechanisms in cars is very relevant here. One thing that we're seeing in the innovation of startups in cybersecurity is this concept of shift left, right? So what you want to be in a security, from a business side, you would rather not be in the business of being a brake on business, being something that holds back progress. And the challenge is that's historically the way it's been, and that's why people who build products and build services also historically have moved very fast and worried about fixing bugs and fixing broken things later on down the road in version 2 and version 3 of the service or the offering. And so a mindset has shifted, certainly with security vendors, around how do we appeal to the developer community? How do we enable them to be agile, to build as part of the software development lifecycle, to be secure from the get-go? So from an innovation perspective, there's a lot of focus there right now. One of the challenges of that, though, is that most security vendors, myself included, have historically focused on the chief security officer. And speaking to development is another language shift, right? It's a different model to sell to them, to talk to the language of development, to enable that agility, but in a secure way. So.
Right, that's true. I don't know if anybody else, I got Rick and Mike kind of looking like they want to say something, so I'll give one of you guys, do you want to poke at that or say something towards it?
Yeah, I'll say for the most part, I mean, I've been doing this for over 30 years from an IT or information technology perspective. And for years, as a network engineer, back in the day, the security professionals used to be known as the IA department, information assurance, and the colonel can remember that. And we joked around and we said that we always said you can't spell pain without IA. I mean, we hated that team because they the more secure it was, the most secure network was the one that couldn't communicate with anybody. And so we had to balance this, operational effectiveness with security, and we kind of went through that. But that was because security was always a bolt-on. It was always an afterthought. But that's no longer the case. I mean, we deal with enterprise architectures on a daily basis. And what I do across public sector, we deal with customers that have enterprise scale, and almost everything that we do, security is the foundation. Security is like the substratum across everything that we're doing from an enterprise architecture perspective. And thankfully, in a lot of products, security is already built in or baked in. So it's no longer an afterthought. It has to be part of everything, every architecture. And if it's not, then obviously, I mean, whoever's doing that deployment won't be around that long.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
I you said something that I absolutely love what you said about cyber being sexy. And sometimes I worry that we get over rotated on the really kind of sexy things. I remember going to a conference and the flow chart that was like, everyone was talking about blockchain, and then the flow chart came out. Do you need blockchain? And the answer was always no. At times we go from threat intelligence to machine learning to like we get fixated on this one thing. And sometimes we miss the most basic obvious things, right? At the first hacker conference I ever went to, there was a whole presentation on cyber squirrel, and the cyber squirrels are winning. And I think about that, this notion of resiliency in whatever infrastructure you're building. That's not a sexy concept, but it's a really important one. So you don't get taken down by a cyber squirrel. And I think sometimes we miss that point. Like, let's get the basic blocking and tackling done. You can't have a cyber conversation without someone saying that. So I decided to be that person today.
Don't want to be in that photo. So as you kind of think about the lens that we're looking at between private and public, you kind of have to think to yourself, how do we work together? You've got all these capabilities up, but the fence that kind of keeps us all away and sharing is the legality of it. I coach several cyber teams today. We have 90 plus teams in tech acceleration at Atlanta Tech Park. I am also on 4 boards. I just added a 5th one, and they wanted me not because I'm female, although that's a popular thing to be female. It's nice to be in the popularity space. It's because I'm somebody who does digital transformation and cyber risk. And so I'm on those boards, and as I'm listening to what they're doing, what I'm hearing for the first time is the budget they're putting towards cyber. And I think to myself, my EU companions put something in place. I call it the carrot and the stick. It's GDPR. Anybody want to vote that we should bring GDPR to the United States to actually help us move forward in this space, so that if we're not doing the right things in this space, that we actually fine the companies and or the agencies, it could be even the government, for not meeting a certain data privacy regulation? Anybody want to jump in on data?
Sure. Well, GDPR is already here. If you're a multinational company, you are already subject to the compliance requirements of GDPR. So in many ways, we're already there. As far as the carrot and the stick approach to helping improve our level of security, both on a national level as on a commercial level, I think it's important. No one likes the stick. I think the stick is necessary. But I think the approach, and by the way, the government has recently, I think DOJ said that they will penalize defense contractors who do not disclose breaches. TSA has done the same thing for air and rail recently. So, and our national cybersecurity leaders are also pushing this concept of fines for failure to disclose breaches. So we are going that direction, and I think that's okay. You need some stick, but I personally would like to see a more collaborative approach there, where instead of defining a low bar of compliance, which we all know that compliant does not equal secure, I'd rather have an outcomes-based approach, which is probably sector-based, sector by sector, commercial entities and government partnering to find what is the critical assets that need to be protected within that industry, because they know that industry, and then what are the outcomes we need to do to focus on to ensure that we get there. So focusing on outcomes with a little stick behind it, I think we're there. It's going to increasingly be there.
Rick? You look like you needed to say something, so I was going to open up the mic for you.
No, I appreciate it. I definitely like the discussion around outcomes, and I like the motivation around it as well. And if there is a clear outcome and some type of operational outcome, especially in a conversation around data, once you operationalize data and data actually starts to produce real outcomes in an organization, obviously in a secure fashion, then other organizations' success, kind of begets success. The conversation that Ken just had reminded me of one of my commanders a long time ago. I remember he took over a mission in Bosnia. We were in Bosnia in like '98. And when he took over, one of the brigades reported the same thing that he had been reporting every day, but this was a new commander. And he reported, "Sir, yesterday we did 88 patrols." And the commander said, "Yeah, but what did you do?" He said, "Well, yesterday we did 88 patrols." He's like, "Yeah, but what did you do?" It was like, "Well, sir," he was like, "You're not getting it. I don't care what you did. I want to know what effect you created." And as long as we focus on not compliance, but really we still have to be compliant. But if we focus on the impact, the effect, the operational outcome, then you'll see that people will jump on board. That's not the stick approach. They will jump on board because they want to realize that outcome on the other side.
Excellent. So, when you think of outcomes and you sit in meetings, and I sit in a lot of meetings, and I hear somebody say, well, we've had 4 meetings on that so far. And I'm like, so what did you do? What did you deliver? What did you change? What decision did you make? And you get that blank stare. You kind of think, okay, well, are we really teaching the other group better? And then I look at our education system and I think, well, maybe we're teaching, sit in your chair, keep your mouth shut, do your homework as you're told, and you'll be moved and advanced to the next grade. Well, actually, maybe we should break that mold a little bit, and we need to engage the students around the table to make decisions, to watch their outcomes, and see what that delivers. Colonel, I know you guys are doing something in the data space and engaging with you guys call it the data workforce. Can you share some about what you guys are doing there?
So that's one of the areas that I was really going to ask for help. So I'm responsible for training our signal soldiers and seeing a definite deficit in our data knowledge. And I take that from more of the data scientist, data analytics perspective. And if you are familiar with our ORSAs, most of those folks, the research analysts, those folks there's some pretty darn smart folks there, but only 10% of them are really data analysts.
Wow.
Coming from a COCOM or trying to stand up our data effort. And we don't have the workforce to really get after it. We have network engineers, we have service type folks, application type folks, but it was really that ORSA that was probably the most talented person to help us kind of move forward. So from a schoolhouse perspective, it is we're going to have to reach out to industry to help us to develop what our curriculum should be. Another area in which we were trying to tackle that was through a direct commissioning program. All branches are now doing a direct commissioning program. Last year we had 37 applicants and only 2 were accepted. And those folks had military background. They weren't the data type folks that we were looking for, that expertise. This year is a little different. We have 26. And it's a mixture of a straight general communications officer and then network engineers. But that's exactly what we're trying to target to help develop our force.
Well, not to promote my alma mater, I got my master's at Georgia Tech. So I would tell you there's a lot of capability there around data, and data scientists and data analytics can always help you in that space. But if you don't realize the reason we're getting hacked and attacked and all that type of stuff is because they're coming after our data. Right? It's our data that's precious. And people that really do the best in any business, whether it be government or private, are people that really understand how the data flows across their business and where the critical data sits and how it's interacted. So I would highly recommend, if there's some people we can engage you with, I would do that. I'll help you out. It's where I started my career. So I love data. It's one of my favorites. So Mike, I know you guys love data too. And you guys have a lot of capabilities in data analytics. So I didn't know if there was something you wanted to share there as well.
Yeah, we do. And again, I think to kind of tie 2 points together or 2 threads together, the discussion around education, I find this industry that we're in together to be one that's very hands-on. So when you take an education approach, which is very memorization or sort of rote kind of education, like it doesn't resonate with the population of people that we ultimately want. And this is where I'll foot stomp and I think the cyber industry leads the way. And these notions of, hack the Army, for example, capture the flags, those types of things. We're starting to see practical applications of capture the flag type concepts in data science, whereas as we take advantage of the concept but apply it to a different target base, my engineering population is lighting up. They love it. And they're like, wait, what is this? Because traditional network engineers have not been doing capture the flags for a long time, unless they happen to be cyber focused or InfoSec people. So I think it's that practical, again, I keep saying, let's get our hands on stuff. Let's go do stuff. get to the why, get people's hands dirty inside of it, and then put some fun stuff out there, be it a hackathon or a capture the flag type activity that's got an interesting prize. It doesn't need to be huge. It could be the stuff I do for a free t-shirt would scare some people. But, things like that, I think, are ways we can move things forward. And as we can drive that into schoolhouses and things like that, I think that'll have a big impact.
And I think it's if you start early. So we're getting close to our time. I don't know how much more time I've got left. I don't know if I have a timekeeper here or not. Any timekeeper? I'm just going to keep plowing forward. Yep. So do I have a few more minutes? I got 1 more minute, 2 more minutes. I got 3 more minutes. All right. So I was trying to get some time because I'm looking at the time back there and it says 1:50 and we were supposed to stop at 1:50. So I just want to make sure I've got time. So I'm going to go around the table kind of in rapid fire. If there was one thing that you wanted to leave behind for the, the folks that we're talking to today, or, because we're being recorded, I'm sure somebody's going to play this again. If there was one thought that you wanted to leave, kind of to instill or an ask, what would that be, Ken? What would you don't want to go first? I can put somebody else.
No,
up
I don't know
there.
if I don't know if I have an ask. I just I'm more of a shout out. How about a shout out?
You want to do a shout out?
The shout out is that there is endless stuff that we can do and a very broad definition of what public and private collaboration should look like. But let's also take pride in some of the achievements that we've made. And one the shout out today goes to NIST. So the guidance that they provided has been unbelievable. They have fully embraced public-private partnerships. They stood up the National Cyber Security Center of Excellence, which was specifically designed to encourage this collaboration, working with industry. They're hammering out guidance on zero trust and software assurance and secure development environments. So a real shout out to NIST. We can do more. And where would we be without folks like Ron Ross up there? So Great work for them.
I agree. Thank you very much. Colonel?
I was going to go with the same vein as Ken with actually the thank yous. Shout out to the corporations that support our National Guard and Reserve soldiers and officers. They bring a lot of talent to our Signal Corps, so I appreciate you supporting the time that they are away from your company, and again, the talent that they bring to us. And then those companies that support the Army Career Skills Program. So as soldiers are at the end of their career, about the last 180 days, they can work with a company to do like an internship program with them, and it usually turns into the job at the end state in most cases. So those of you that support that program, I just wanted to say thank you.
Super. Thank you. Mike?
To quote the Honorable General Powell, perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. I would just encourage everyone to stay optimistic in this. Please don't let the challenges facing us in cyber get you down. There is great reason for hope, and I'm excited about what we're going to do together.
Same here. Thank you. Rick?
2 quick things. I would like to say, for those in uniform, just be open, lower the apprehension. Let's work together in a collaborative way. There are a lot of people in the industry that definitely want to help the mission. And then as a shout out, this is a shout. I do have the Chief of Signal on here. So a shout out to the U.S. Army Signal Regiment. I still bleed orange. When I see what signaleers are doing on a daily basis, it makes me proud. So thank you for what you do every day.
I think that is fabulous. So, as I close, and for you guys, I have a French last name, Bienfait. It means well done. But I'm a native of Valdosta, Georgia. So I grew up here and have lived here for a lot of my life and moved around the world. And the one thing you see with us and our military, we truly support our troops. And I really support what our mission is trying to do and really want to see a bigger collaborative effort between the private and the public sector. I think there's a lot of things we could do together. And, it not always be, hey, you've got to purchase something or buy something. Even mentoring somebody who's just come out of the military, I do this all the time because I really want to promote the careers and people's growth in this cyberspace. And if it's to help somebody get from the military into the private sector world because they don't understand there's a different language being spoken between both, that's something we do a lot of. And I just encourage anyone that has the open bandwidth to take that on. There's a lot of people looking for that kind of support, and it brings both our private and public sector together a lot faster when you have people that are trained in the military and come into the workforce. And our workforce in the commercial space or in the private space is struggling because it's hard for us to hire people. It's hard for us to find talented and trained people, and we're best to get those people, but our veterans and maybe our retired military. So I'll give that as a plug or a shout out. I don't know, do I still have time? I keep giving you're telling me to cut it off? All right, well, we had a lot of fun. Thank you guys very much. Great to have energy here in the room. Thank you guys. Appreciate everybody on the panel. Thank you for being, and let me being a little bit chewy. Thank you guys.